Every profession has a breaking point, that moment when passion collides with reality, when dreams meet the unforgiving weight of day-to-day struggle. For teachers, that moment often comes in the first year, in the quiet hours before dawn, when the gap between who they hope to be and who they fear they've become feels insurmountable. This is the story of one such morning, when a young teacher's decision to take a run instead of hitting send changed everything. It's not a story about sudden transformation or miraculous breakthroughs. It's about something harder and more important: the choice to stay. John sat on the edge of his bed at 4:47 a.m., staring at the resignation letter on his phone screen. His thumb hovered over the send button. Just one tap and it would all be over. 3 months. That's how long he'd lasted as a first-year teacher at Lincoln High School. 3 months of sleepless nights, lesson plans that fell flat, and the crushing weight of feeling like a failure. The kids didn't respect him. The veteran teachers looked at him with pity. Even the principal had pulled him aside last week with that concerned look that said, "Maybe teaching isn't for you." The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting. John had dreamed of being a teacher since he was 12. When Mrs. Peterson showed him that algebra wasn't just numbers on a page, but a language that could unlock the universe. He remembered the moment so clearly, sitting in that cramped classroom, suddenly understanding, suddenly feeling powerful. He'd promised himself then that he'd give other kids that same feeling. But reality was different from dreams. His students talked through his lessons. They didn't do their homework. Yesterday, when he'd asked them to solve a simple equation, Tyler Rodriguez had said, "Why should we care about X? When will we use this in real life?" The class had erupted in laughter and agreement. John had stood there, frozen, with no good answer coming to his exhausted mind. He looked at the clock. 4:51 a.m. In 2 hours, he'd have to face them again. His finger moved closer to the send button. Then his phone buzzed with a different notification. A reminder he'd set weeks ago. "Morning run. You promised yourself." John almost laughed. What was the point of a morning run when he was quitting anyway? But something made him set the phone down. Maybe it was muscle memory. Maybe it was just the need to delay. He pulled on his running shoes. The October air was cold and sharp as he stepped outside. The streets were empty except for a few scattered porch lights. John started running, not with any particular destination in mind, just moving forward because stopping meant going back inside to press that button. His breathing fell into rhythm. His feet hit the pavement in steady beats. And slowly his mind began to clear. He thought about Tyler Rodriguez, the kid who'd embarrassed him yesterday. But Tyler was also the student who came to class even though John knew he worked nights at his uncle's restaurant. Tyler showed up tired, sometimes hungry, but he showed up. That took strength John hadn't acknowledged. He thought about Maya Chun, who sat in the back and never spoke. Last week, he'd noticed her notebook was filled with perfect solutions to every problem he'd written on the board, plus several more advanced ones she'd done on her own. She'd closed the notebook quickly when she saw him looking, embarrassed by her own brilliance. He thought about Jordan Williams, who disrupted every class, but who'd stayed after school one day and asked, so quietly John almost couldn't hear, "Mr. Bennett, do you really think I'm smart enough for college?" The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. John found himself running through Jefferson Park, past the basketball courts where some of his students played on weekends, past the community center where a few of them volunteered. He stopped at the top of the hill overlooking the school. Lincoln High looked different in the dawn light, less like a prison, more like what it actually was. A building full of possibility and potential, full of kids who were trying to figure out who they were and where they belonged in the world. John sat on a bench, breathing hard. The truth hit him then, simple and clear. He wasn't failing because he was a bad teacher. He was struggling because he was a new teacher and teaching was hard. The hardest thing he'd ever tried to do. Mrs. Peterson, his hero, had once told him, "I almost quit my first year. The best decision I ever made was staying." John had forgotten that part of the story. He'd only remembered the inspiring teacher, not the struggling beginner who'd become him. He pulled out his phone and looked at the resignation letter again. Then he did something different. He opened his notes app and started writing. Things I did right this week. Jasmine understood quadratic equations after my one-on-one explanation. 3 students showed up to my after-school study session. I learned all 147 of my students' names. I showed up every day, even when I didn't want to. The list was shorter than he'd like, but it was real. It was progress. It was proof that he was learning, growing, becoming better. Rome wasn't built in a day, and Mrs. Peterson hadn't become a great teacher in 3 months. John deleted the resignation letter. Instead, he started a new note, lesson plan making math real. He thought about Tyler's question. When would they use this in real life? It was a fair question, and John realized he needed to have better answers. He started brainstorming ways to connect equations to music, to sports, to the things his students actually cared about. By the time he ran home, showered, and prepared for school, John felt different. Not confident exactly, but determined. He wasn't going to be a great teacher today. Maybe not even a good one, but he was going to be a teacher who tried, who cared, who showed up. When he walked into his first period class, Tyler Rodriguez was already in his seat, head down on his desk. John could have interpreted that negatively like he had yesterday. Today, he chose to see a kid who'd worked all night and still came to school. "Morning, Tyler," John said. "Rough night." Tyler looked up, surprised to be acknowledged. "Yeah, Mr. Bennett. Long shift." "I appreciate you being here," John said simply. Something shifted as more students filed in. John wrote on the board, "Today's question. Show me where you see math in your real life. Convince me." It wasn't perfect. The lesson might still fall flat. But he was trying something new, adapting, learning. That's what he'd ask his students to do. He owed them the same effort. Maya Chun raised her hand, the first time all semester. "Yes, Maya," John said, trying to keep the surprise out of his voice. "I use algebra to calculate the best deals when I'm shopping for my family. My mom doesn't speak English well, so I help her figure out which prices are actually better." "That's perfect," John said, and he meant it. "Can you show us on the board?" As Maya walked to the front of the class, John caught his reflection in the window. He looked tired. He probably still made 100 mistakes, but he also looked like someone who hadn't quit. And that morning, that was enough.